Hello and welcome to the Angry Microwave podcast for this spoiler discussion of The Rise of Skywalker. Just a couple of things to note. Obviously, this is a spoiler discussion, so we're going to be talking in depth about the film. And also, just for context, we watched this as part of a trilogy screening, didn't we?
Yeah.
Last night. So if we look a little bit dishevelled, it's because we had very little sleep. But we wanted to kind of rest on this for a couple of hours before we went into our spoiler discussion, because there is so much in this film.
Possibly too much, I'd say.
Possibly too much. But that's your warning. It's a spoiler discussion, so if you haven't seen the movie... if you haven't seen the movie, then why are you watching a spoiler discussion? But if you don't care about spoilers, or if you have seen the movie, then this is the review for you.
So where do we even start with this? There's honestly so much stuff to start.
Where do you start? Okay, so the first thing starts with, we saw this as part of a trilogy screening.
Yeah.
How does it compare to the episode 7 and episode 8? Or how do those films hold up for you now?
I think we were saying last night, it shows its flaws by being with those two films.
Okay.
Mainly with the pacing and how much stuff there is.
Yeah.
With the first two, it's a very simple, you can plot on a graph the points where they're at and the progression and the pacing.
Yeah.
Rather than the Rise of Skywalker would just be like a scatter graph with points from everywhere. Literally, it's...
Pacing is a big issue for this film, I think. So episode 7, I adore. I've adored it since the moment I first watched that movie. I think it's incredible, and I still think it holds up.
Yep.
The Last Jedi I didn't like when I first watched it, and I liked it even less the second time. But after watching it last night as part of this trilogy, I actually think The Last Jedi is a very strong film. And I don't know what that says about episode 9, but after watching episode 9 after episode 8, I thought episode 8 was really good.
I think the problem with this whole trilogy that comes out of seeing Rise of Skywalker is it often seems one step forward, two steps back.
Right.
With a lot of the plot points. So Rey's parents, one step forward and two steps back, and then another step forward and another two steps back. It just seems to be that's a recurring theme that it's not a concise trilogy.
Right.
And I think 1 and 2 lead it up to a conclusion that you could offer in the third one, but I don't think I didn't find it that satisfying apart from the last 5 minutes of the film.
Okay.
It wasn't I was sat there going, oh my god, it all makes sense now.
Okay.
I never really had that feeling. And even with Rey's parents being, grandparents being revealed as Palpatine, I didn't get that satisfying, when they normally drop a big bit of information and the whole crowd goes, oh my god, wow. We didn't really have that. And we had a sold out screening as well.
It was probably the first time I've gone to a midnight screening where there was hardly any fan reaction to anything. And I remember even when I watched The Last Jedi, you can feel in the room that a lot of people weren't enjoying that movie. But when there was the throne scene, the throne room scene, people gasped at that. But with the revelation that Rey's lineage is, she's a Palpatine, so I guess we'll start with that. There was no audible reaction to that, and I think if anything, there was maybe a sigh here and there, just like that, just because I felt like we'd wrapped up that whole arc. But it turns out this whole movie is based around who Rey was, which kind of...
I think it works in some ways. I think the conclusion of her taking the Skywalker name, I think the last 5 minutes is perfect.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could have been the last 5 minutes to any Star Wars film.
Right.
It would have been perfect.
Yeah. It was a very good last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's probably the most Star Wars it felt, was the last 5 minutes. But so Rey's lineage, obviously we said she's a Palpatine. I think that's going to divide some fans.
But again, we were saying yesterday as well, they're I don't get why they use the Emperor in the marketing. I don't think it sold any more tickets.
No.
And I feel like that would have been the biggest surprise of the film if he came back and nobody knew. And there was no reason for them to reveal it at Star Wars Celebration when they did.
No.
Because there was no leaks he was on set, or at least I didn't see any leaks like that.
There was nothing at all. And to be honest, the opening 5 minutes of this film, I would have felt, I think, a little bit in awe if I didn't know that Palpatine was in this.
Yeah.
So to open episode 9 with Palpatine, at least you kind of have that shock factor, and you have the, oh shit, okay, what's this about? What's going on here? But they reveal it in the opening crawl that there have been Palpatine's whispers, and it's that feels like that should have been a film in itself.
So I have problems with the opening scroll as well.
Right.
Because it basically sets up for Kylo having a power struggle with the Emperor because Kylo wants power.
Yeah.
And that is not the film we see, I don't think.
No.
I think we see Kylo struggling with his heritage more than trying to get power, but that scroll kind of says power. So I was a bit confused about what that was like trying to go for, to be totally honest. Like the scroll didn't line up with the film that I saw. And I know that's a tiny point to make, but I feel like if you're going to be really bold in the way it was set out, going this character's here, this character's here, this character's here, it just didn't really work for me. And also the Emperor just having a message go across the galaxy, but then the Resistance being shocked halfway through the film when they become aware of the Emperor back. It's like, so was it going throughout the galaxy?
Yeah, the opening crawl was you say it sounds like a minor quibble, but it's a Star Wars film. Like, the opening crawl's important. Like, I remember the Phantom Menace opening crawl being about a trade war, but like the opening crawls should kind of give you some setup to what's happened, and it's the stuff that you don't need to be aware of, really. It's kind of giving you a bit of pretext, and then we open with our movie. The opening crawl shouldn't be, this is a movie that you could have had.
Yeah.
Here's all this information in 2 paragraphs. I'm pretty sure it was quite a short crawl, but what I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was quite simple as well. I kind of liked how simple it was. It just didn't seem like that factual.
Yeah.
Like with the film.
Yeah.
So the other bit, which I kind of enjoyed and also kind of bugged me in the same way, was seeing the trilogy. Well, was seeing the whole crew together again.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah.
But I feel like that, like, they didn't really interact. So because Rey's so powerful, it wasn't really a fair fight in any situation.
Right.
And it's not even like Kylo uses like Finn or Poe in any kind of like battle way. It just seems like in the one scene it nearly comes to that. Rey just pushes him out the way, and that's the end of that. It just didn't really seem. It seemed very forced that they were all together.
Yeah.
And I know that was like a lot of criticism from Last Jedi that they did that and split them up. But it just seems like they're kind of too forced together in this.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we watched this as part of a trilogy screening. The first time they're on screen together is for like the last 30 seconds. Literally, they're on screen together for about 30 seconds in The Last Jedi when Poe introduces himself at the end to Rey, and then that's it. And now suddenly we're meant to believe that I guess the characters don't really have that chemistry, because why would they? We haven't seen them together before. What did you make of the revelation of Rey being a Palpatine? Do you think it was forced? Do you think
I was just kind of glad it was over at this point. Like,
that's quite sad, isn't it? If you're glad that it's
I feel like they've been like constantly mentioning it again and again and again and again, saying nobody. You get to the point, and it's like, is it nobody or is it somebody? Like, there was a lot of like the parents are nobodies, but the grandparents are. So it just seems like a kind of get out clause. I know it sounds really stupid, but I would have loved to have seen what the original draft for like the whole trilogy or concept from JJ was.
Well, I think that's something that's clearly an issue with this trilogy, is that I don't think there was a clear roadmap. And I've seen some people say that The Last Jedi is too much fan service, but I actually disagree. I don't think this is fan service. I don't think the fans wanted this.
So I think my problem now with The Last Jedi, after seeing all 3 in the same like sitting, is The Last Jedi tries for too much humour.
Right.
I think that was where the issue laid with The Last Jedi. Right. Because it's not a bad film. It's a great Star Wars film. But it just seems like there's too much humour implanted throughout it.
Right.
I think that's where the flaws are, rather than any like weird force thing that the people were moaning about. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest flaws that we saw out of The Last Jedi from this screening.
But, so, Finn, I think they set up a really interesting character in The Force Awakens. I think the idea of a stormtrooper kind of having a conscience and then, just leaving and going to the not the Republic, Resistance. See, we still don't know what the First Order really is, do we? Really? It's all. Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of stuttering over my words because I'm a little bit stressed.
Are you surprised Captain Phasma didn't make a return?
I am surprised, because I thought, well, if you're going to have a running gag, at least follow it through.
Can you imagine she rocks up?
Yeah, I wouldn't even. I've minded that.
Also, the other thing, I mean, this isn't really structured this podcast or this episode at all.
No, it's a mess.
But Kylo's like, he seems to become self-aware halfway through the film.
Yeah.
And starts like doing like all like Jim from The Office staring at the camera like at certain points, like that level of self-awareness.
He felt to me, it was almost like there's a bit of an overlap with him and Hux. I feel like he kind of took on some of the Hux character traits. And don't get me wrong, I do like Hux's like coming of age moment in this. I actually do quite like that. But then he just gets wiped out, doesn't he?
It's fucking great the way they just like
just kill him off. I just going back to Finn for a second. I do think they set up an interesting character arc, and they hint in this that he's Force sensitive. Although what bothered me is that throughout the film he's trying to tell Rey something, and I think that's what he was trying to tell Rey, but he never openly says what he wanted to tell her, and that just felt so unfinished and so.
It literally comes up about 3 times in the film.
Yeah, well, 3 or 4 times.
And you expect the payoff to come at the end.
Yeah, to the point where it actually causes tension between obviously him and Poe. And if you're gonna have that tension, at least have some payoff. And there was no payoff.
Yeah.
And I thought if they're gonna go down the fact that Finn is Force sensitive route, then I thought it may have been interesting. Especially because he was the poster boy for the first movie, wasn't he? Yeah. Which was a misdirect really in the end. But I thought that would have been interesting. If he was Force sensitive, like how interesting would it have been if you had someone like Rey who had some lineage that she didn't want, and maybe Poe who was someone who didn't have any lineage, and he was the one that kind of had Rey's, I'm nobody. But you had 2 Jedis, or I just think there were so many possibilities and so many routes you could have gone down. I think some people will say that Rey is overpowered in this movie. I actually found that quite interesting. I think if you're going to have a Jedi in their prime, then at least go, show what they can do.
And I also think that Emperor heritage kind of supports that as well, that powerfulness.
Yeah.
It kind of gives it some backing.
Yeah.
And I think that was some people's issues with the earlier films was that there wasn't really that backing, but now looking back, it kind of makes a lot more sense that coming from that family tree, you're obviously going to be one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. Yeah. Even without any training.
No, I do. I enjoyed that stuff, like the training montage, and I kind of enjoyed that because it was quite short, so I didn't mind that.
Leia, should we get on to Leia?
Yeah, Leia. So Leia is Carrie Fisher's in this movie. They used footage from footage they didn't use in the Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. They pieced that together. It did feel. It felt fine in some places. It felt a little bit off, but I think in 20 years' time, if you go back and watch this, I don't think you're going to remember that. I don't think it's going to be noticeable that much.
For some reason, that first opening shot of her seems really CG, and I don't understand why. Because they said they weren't using CG, and it's only that one shot that just seems really And
it's unfortunate it's the first shot we see of her, because it reminds you that obviously she wasn't around for any of this filming. She died, 3-4 years ago now?
Yeah,
quite a while ago.
Whenever Rogue One came out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a shame that it's the first shot that reminds you that this is kind of stitched together, which is a shame. But again, there's nothing wrong with her performance. Nothing felt like it wasn't used because it was a bad performance.
I thought it was quite cleverly edited. It's a bit janky at places, but you can kind of understand why. It's probably because we were looking out for it and kind of knew.
Yeah, I do think in 10 years' time, if children or young adults watch this for the first time, it's the first time they've seen this trilogy, I don't think it's going to stand out like a bad thumb. What do you think of the conclusion to Leia's arc?
I thought it was quite moving that the fact that the whole reason why Ben, even that's weird now to say Ben rather than Kylo. Yeah. I need to be careful with that because I don't want to spoil it to anyone.
It's a spoiler discussion.
But I thought that was quite moving. That kind of her final oomph into that world, just kind of bringing Kylo back home. Yeah. I thought that was quite moving.
I do like that her last act was to try and save her son. I thought that was a very good way for her character to go out. I thought it was a fitting way. It's something Leia would do, and it made sense. And I think it's also a fitting way to say goodbye to Carrie Fisher as well. Yeah. I think it's the fact that she went out almost at peace with the fact that she's trying to save her son. She went out the same way that Han Solo did, also, which I thought was a nice...
Han Solo came back?
Han Solo came back for a cheeky cameo.
He was at the premiere, and I was like, he hates Star Wars, he wouldn't be there unless he was getting a paycheck.
after watching a bit of a side note, when we were watching The Force Awakens, Harrison Ford looks really good. Like he's actually really good in that movie, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I think what they did with Han and Leia, and I think kind of the overall ideas they had for Kylo, I thought was a good arc. I do wonder how good or how much we would have enjoyed this character on screen if it was portrayed by someone else. Because Adam Driver is so good.
This is the year of Adam Driver. I feel like people have finally woken up to how good Adam Driver is as an actor.
But he's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah, literally.
He is so good.
He brings his all, like...
Yeah.
Even looking at Marriage Story and Star Wars, very different films, but the performances are both so strong and feel so real in both, which is like massive credit to Adam Driver.
One thing I will say, maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion, I do feel like, because John Boyega is an incredible actor, right, and he is good at this.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He's an incredible actor, and he's very good in this, and he's good in all of them. But in terms of Finn as a character, I know I keep coming back to Finn, but I feel like they started something in The Force Awakens, and then in each film, it's like he's given something different to do that doesn't quite fit in the whole character arc. There's no direct arc for me.
It's very much an afterthought, and again, like going back to The Last Jedi, I know this isn't a Last Jedi spoiler cast, but I think it's quite important. I take the arc from that. Like, you could take his whole arc out of The Last Jedi, and I was reminded about that again. Yeah. And you lose nothing to the plot. Like, like there's no consequence of what he does by going to to infiltrate the First Order. So, like, it just feels quite throwaway. Like, this is my problem with the ensemble of this film. Like, the ensemble is great to watch when there's so much stuff happening. Yeah. It just feels like they're a bit pointless, like, just observing what's happening rather than influencing.
I can't help but feel like, for me, it's the same problem as the Emperor. I feel like if you're going to follow through with like JJ's original ideas, it does feel like JJ's gone back to his original ideas from The Force Awakens. Especially when you go back and look at the art of Star Wars, I think there are clearly some concepts that he wanted to address, but obviously there wasn't space for in The Force Awakens. But I feel like Palpatine shouldn't be a one movie arc. That should have been either a revelation at the end of The Force Awakens or in The Last Jedi. But my problem with Finn as a character is that there doesn't feel like any resolution, because it doesn't feel like there's anything to resolve. And I do find the fact that he's perhaps Force sensitive was really interesting. But I don't know, we haven't talked about Poe Dameron. One thing I like about Poe Dameron is that he isn't just the best pilot in the galaxy because he's Force sensitive or because he's so unimportant. He's just the greatest pilot in the galaxy. Like
Kerry Russell's character, who plays this kind of like on and off love interest in this. Yeah. It just seems like, I feel like they could have set that up in a previous film. Yeah. And then the conclusion, when they kind of meet back up at the end, would have had more impact. It very much seems like, oh shit, we need to like set this character up for a moment. Here is her, and this is what happens. Done. It just feels very like last minute, kind of like we need to give this character some importance.
So this movie is shorter than The Last Jedi, and they're trying to tell twice as much, I think.
I mean, looking back, like the problem with like the first 2/3 of that film is that I don't really remember it because it was going so fast. Like
at some point, some scenes could easily have been 30 seconds. In terms of that's how long the scenes could have been. That's what they felt like. Like they felt like they were 30 seconds. Just like scene. Oh, here's Palpatine. See you later. Here, Pay's really powerful. Rey's really powerful. Next scene. You know, and it's.
Like even Lando's like reveal, which was quite a big thing. Yeah. Like I thought the reveal was quite neat. I mean, it just disappears.
I never thought I'd say this about a Star Wars movie because I feel like the marketing campaigns for Episode 8 and Episode 7 were really good. But I feel like I've seen everything this movie has to offer, like in the marketing material.
Like even the ships coming together, like you knew that was going to happen. Yeah.
So you're waiting for that big shot where everyone turns up at the end to save the day. You know Palpatine's in it. You know Lando turns up.
And you also know when Rey and Kylo have that battle. Yeah. Really early on in the film. Yeah. You know, like, okay, so that's not the conclusion to that bit then. It just... I mean, and it's not a bad film. Like, I enjoyed the film. It's just in terms of Star Wars films, which everybody holds to a way higher standard, kind of like as they should because it's Star Wars. it just doesn't. It just seems so rushed, and I kind of wish that, like this. I think this is one of those instances where if they split it into part 1, part 2, I would have been fine with that, and I think the film would have like done way better because of that.
And I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. I feel like going into this, they planned to do a trilogy for a trilogy's sake, but because there was no roadmap, the pacing of the third film, which is the payoff, which is essentially going to be like the heart of the film, is rushed because there's no roadmap for this trilogy. And I feel like I wouldn't have even have minded if they'd gone for 4 films, like you said, like if they'd gone for an episode 9 and an episode 10. Like, why does it have to be in 3s? Like, because it's a nice pattern. Yeah. Like, why I don't understand. But I do think there are some things that you could have taken out. Like, I'm not entirely sure you had to have Palpatine in this.
Oh my! I was literally about to say he's in it too much.
Like, he is in it too much, isn't he?
Like the shots linger on him too much, and it even just seems like his face just seems. It's very Hollywood makeup-y.
Yeah.
And it just stays in there for too long every time he talks.
Yeah. See, the thing is, we've never had someone. This is what I'm going to start gushing over The Last Jedi. I never thought I'd do this. Right. With The Last Jedi, Kylo killed Snoke, and if Snoke was the big bad, the fact that they killed him, I actually think could have worked wonders for the third movie in this trilogy. Yeah. Because we've never had someone who has like killed the overall, puppet master pulling the strings and become the big bad himself. Like, we could have had someone in Kylo Ren, and he could have been the villain, and that would have been fine. You don't need to have someone who's like trying to control him, or he's trying to fight these inner demons. We've had that for 2 movies now.
I still feel like you can get rid of the Emperor, Kylo still be bad, and then Kylo still have his redemption moment. Yeah,
because that makes the redemption moment even better. Because the moment from that opening crawl where it says that Kylo Ren is fighting for power with Palpatine, then Kylo's like conflicting with everyone, and then he gets redeemed. And why is Palpatine even there? Because you told us in the opening credits
it would have been way more interesting if he had like complete power and was actually struggling with having that complete power. Like, and then Leia has a moment.
If he had complete power and he was the one to rise the Empire's fleet, because I do love that imagery, and I think that's it's not just at this point it's not just a reference to the original trilogy, is it? It's a fucking blowjob to it. But like it. I actually think it would have been cool to have Kylo Ren become this all powerful, this seemingly unredeemable character. But then if Leia is the one to redeem him after all of this, how powerful would that have been?
Yeah, it just...
Because all you've got now is literally the same mark as Darth Vader. That's what you've got. Like, like, they kill off the Emperor and he's redeemed. Like, we don't need to see that again.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
And also, my other problem with this film... There's so many fake deaths in this film that the deaths start to lose prominence. Yeah. Like by the time you get to the big hard hitting ones at the end with Rey, with Kylo, you just go, are they? And I think that's a problem.
Well, you say fake deaths. The amount of times that someone dies and then they get brought back to life, and then someone dies and they get brought back to life, it's like, well.
So you got like the Emperor, you got Chewie.
Yeah.
So when people like Hux die, you're just like,
you Kylo twice.
Yeah. It's just, there's so much stuff like that. It's just...
Yeah.
And at the end, it kind of feels like a game of ping pong when Rey and Kylo are going between each other, between dying.
Yeah, because we think he's dead, and then she dies, and he comes back and he saves her, brings her back to life, and that means that he dies. And it's like...
It just loses all emotional, like, oomph to it, which is kind of a shame, because I thought... Oh, and also, why did they have to kiss?
Oh, I hated that so much. Oh, I hated that so much.
Like... I kind of thought that it got to that point where like romance wouldn't be in it and it would be more like a like actual connection, and then they just because
the thing is, right, they clearly had a bond, right? They clearly have they clearly have a bond and a connection, and the Force is strong in them and stuff like that. But I don't understand why it had to end in romance, because I think that diminishes that doesn't diminish his character, because all he's ever wanted, I guess, he's never really had that affection because he's always been closed off to it. I think that kind of works for him, but that diminishes her. I think that makes her look weak.
Yeah.
Because that means that she's kind of been in love with this person who's been nothing but evil this whole time.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and I think that's probably the only reaction we actually had on our screen, our audible reaction, was everybody
people
like
laughing.
Yeah,
and that shouldn't have been. it was. Yeah, unfortunately, people were laughing at that scene, and I can't really blame them. But you know what? I think this is the perfect way to kind of maybe conclude the discussion, or you do a good comparison. Because we watched a trilogy screening, there was a kid behind us who hadn't seen The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and obviously the Rise of Skywalker.
What a lucky kid.
So he was watching these 3 movies for the first time. First of all, bad parenting. Like, don't keep your kid up until 3 a.m. He kept kicking my chair.
That's a good life decision, that, Jay.
Yeah. But he loved Kylo Ren in the first in The Force Awakens, and he loved that the duel in the woods with them 3. With Kylo, Rey, and Finn. It was so cute. He audibly gasped and said "Wow" with Holdo's sacrifice in The Last Jedi, which goes hyperspeed through the enemy ships. And that was so nice to hear, because we forget that sometimes Star Wars isn't just for us. It's for generations before us, and it's for generations after us. And
I can imagine being a kid watching The Rise of Skywalker. It happened so fast.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So he audibly enjoyed Episode 7 and Episode 8. He was silent through all of Episode 9. And I think if you're not appealing to the fans of the original Star Wars, if you're not appealing to that demographic, and if you're not satisfying the people that have actually enjoyed Episode 7 and 8, like our generation, and if you're not satisfying the kids, then that's the problem you have. By trying to satisfy everyone, you're satisfying no one.
I think I said this last night, it feels like a first draft where JJ just put all his ideas into this one film, and then just like make it as it is.
Yeah.
And it really struggles because of that.
It does, and the thing is that there are obviously parts to enjoy about this. Like I said, I did like Rey. I liked the performances, especially Adam Driver. He can do no wrong. I enjoyed the last 10 minutes. In fact, everything to do with, I think, like the last 20 minutes of this film, I did really enjoy.
Like the last 5 minutes is the perfect ending to a Star Wars saga.
It is.
Which is a shame about the other 2 hour 15 minutes before.
But I don't think it knew what it wanted to be. And I think if you're...
Who are you?
They had such an opportunity. Like when all the Jedi, including some Jedi from the animated series. So you've got like all the Jedi that we've come to know and love. Like we can hear them audibly. But I think, how cool would it have been? Because we've seen Force Ghosts, and we've seen Force Ghosts can, like they can touch tangible things, like they can hold lightsabers and things. But how cool would it have been if the final showdown was, because obviously you've got all of like I don't know who the hooded people were in the throne room. Were they like previous Sith Lords, or what were they? I don't know.
I can't imagine them being there.
But if you just had like some Jedi spectating, for example, or if we just saw these people, you're meant to be rounding off 9 films, but we don't. I mean, we saw Yoda, in Episode 8. We saw Luke for a second in this movie, but like it just felt like, I don't know. It felt like they didn't know what fan service was.
One of it. Okay, so this is a very big tangent, but it's kind of linked. I'm kind of fascinated to see how we deal with this in Galaxy's Edge, because Galaxy's Edge is meant to be canon and it's set after The Last Jedi, I believe.
Right.
But it's just fascinating that they've now just built this like $500 million ride with Kylo as the main villain. That seems mad. I can't wait to see like what they do with that. Like whether they eventually like do that in like 20 years or something.
Right. Unless it takes place during the Rise of Skywalker.
It just seems mad. Yeah, sorry, tangent.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there are things, like I said, there are things that we do really like about it. There are things that we dislike about it. But when a movie has this much in it, and it's this compact, then I think
I'm really intrigued to see it again.
Yeah, I am.
Knowing how much stuff is actually in it, and seeing whether that shows its flaws more. That like I'm seeing that it just jumps around all the time, or whether I can be a bit more like, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to enjoy it a lot more the second time round.
So overall, what would you say of your time watching this new Star Wars trilogy? So now the trilogy is complete. Has it been a worthwhile trilogy? Should I have left it alone?
So I'm not going to rank it because we'll rank it in another video at the Angry Microwave on YouTube. But I don't know how to feel. Like, I think comparing to the other two trilogies that we have, as much as everybody hates on the prequels, there's a very clear arc in that prequel. Yeah. And it feels very much like it's from the same vision. Yeah. Same with the original trilogy. It feels like it's from the same vision. Yeah. Even despite George Lucas not directing the Empire. So that's quite interesting that you don't always need the same director. Yeah. I honestly don't know. I'm still in a bit of a state of like shock about kind of what I experienced, and it's not even a bad shock. Like, it's not a bad film. I don't think anybody's saying it's a bad film.
I think the problem is some people will, like they did with The Last Jedi, I think they'll jump on the bandwagon and say Disney have ruined Star Wars, which is a load of horseshit, because Disney haven't ruined Star Wars. They've given us Star Wars. Like, people forget that they love The Mandalorian so much. Like, I think The Force Awakens is an incredible film. The Rogue One's a very good film. We've got Star Wars rides at Disneyland. Like, Disney haven't ruined, as a matter of fact, Disney haven't ruined Star Wars. Like, they've given us more Star Wars. And if, as fans, we think a company has ruined something we love, then you don't love it.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated to see where they go from here.
Yeah.
So they've got another Star Wars film scheduled in for 2 years' time.
That, I think, is a mistake.
I also don't think they're going to reach that deadline. Like, they need to be in production like next year. Yeah. For it to come out then. Yeah. And I think at the moment, like, Rian Johnson isn't sure if he's doing his film. The Game of Thrones directors creators are just off the table now completely. But like, I don't know whether they're going to expand it after, or whether they start doing more story type films again. But then most story type films didn't particularly work. And I don't know. I also feel like whatever comes next, because there is so much fan service in the Rise of a Skywalker, it's going to struggle if it does try to connect with the main storyline.
I think the issue I've had with the films that we've had, I'm just clarifying my comments about when I said, if you think Disney have ruined Star Wars and you don't like Star Wars, that's not quite what I meant. Because we're always going to have the original. Those original films are always going to be good films. That's just a matter of fact. That's how it works. Yeah. Like, if you love a film, then it's yours to love. But it's also yours to hate as well. But the issue I've had with these films is that everything has taken place from episode 7 through to episode 9 and all the 2 films that we've had in between. And even The Mandalorian. Yeah. It all takes place within this time frame. Between, like, episode 5 and episode 9. But Star Wars, there's such an infinite universe that you can explore. Yeah. Not everything has to take place in a time that we know. Like, no one wanted to see a Han Solo movie. Rogue One was good, but it wasn't necessary because we know exactly what happens. Like, it's we know what happens in that movie before we've seen it. Same with Solo. Yeah. Like, give us something new. Give us something that takes place thousands of years before or thousands of years after. Like, give us something different and give us something fresh. And I think the problem is nothing feels fresh because everything is now too familiar.
I think that's why The Force Awakens seems still so strong, because it was like it was a fresh vision, and we had near enough all new characters in that whole film. Yeah. And it's kind of funny looking back that the film that has the least returning characters is now the most popular. Yeah. And that does fan service in the right way, The Force Awakens. Yeah. Like, the Falcon scene seems quite organic and quite fun and energized. It's not just, oh look, Falcon. Yeah. Unlike what I feel like Rise of Skywalker did quite a lot. It was very much pointing. Especially at the end, like with the Ewok planet. It's like, oh, Ewoks, everybody, look at these Ewoks.
About the Ewoks.
And like, oh, like the Wookiee planet, everybody. Like, remember this?
Yeah.
It seemed very much like they were just pointing and going, oh, fan service.
So I completely agree. I think The Force Awakens was a nod to the things that we love about Star Wars. And Episode 9 was just... It was...
Point and look. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, it was nothing
Emperor.
was subtle. Nothing was subtle. But Star Wars fans are very passionate. Well, we're very passionate people. And
it's not a bad film as well. It's not a bad film.
It's not a bad film. Like, the fact that this is currently the second lowest rated Star Wars movie on Rotten Tomatoes, because this has a lower rating than Solo, which is rubbish. That's just not true. Like, it's not bad. It's not a terribly made film. Like, there's clearly effort put into this. But I think the Star Wars community, they just need to not be so divided on everything. You're allowed to like something. That doesn't mean that you don't love it enough or you hate it too much. You're allowed to just like something. But, like me, I liked this movie, but I like to love Star Wars. And I just didn't love this.
I think that's a perfect way to put it.
The end of that?
Yeah.
Wow, what fun! So let us know what you thought of the movie. Obviously, there's a real chance that our opinions will change over time. I originally didn't like the Last Jedi until last night.
Yeah, you were quite convinced not to even go to a screening.
Yeah,
because
I was actually thinking of having a 3-hour loo break because I didn't like the movie. And Rian Johnson, I apologise. And maybe the same will be said for this one in a few years, but. We love Star Wars, and I can't wait to see what's next. But I just hope it's not within this time period.
Cool. So yeah, I feel exhausted after watching that film last night. Now.
Yeah. Well, because we got in at 4. So
I'm that.
But anyway, I've been Bryce.
I've been Callum.
This has been the Angry Microwave. You've been watching.
Bye.